Thanks for joining us today here at Labor Forward. This is a space created by the School for Workers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I am Lola Loustaunau. I'm an assistant professor here at the School for Workers. And I am so excited today that David Ortiz Whittingham is joining me from Worker Justice Wisconsin to chat about the organizing efforts they've been up to for the past year or so, specifically. But in general, about what the organization has been doing lately. And as many of you might know, but some of you might not, Worker Justice Wisconsin is an interfaith organization that is the only just solely dedicated labor center in the state of Wisconsin. They've been doing amazing work for many years now, particularly organizing immigrant workers in the state. And I'm joined by David, who is their construction organizer specifically. Thank you, David, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So David, just to get us started, tell me a little bit more about your position and what you're doing specifically within Worker Justice Wisconsin.
Yeah, so my position is the construction organizer, and what that basically means is I handle everything to do with construction works in the construction industry. I have coworkers who, have other industry or focuses, but basically mine is everything to do with construction, and that includes, our primary focus is commercial construction, and so those will be like the really big, job sites that you'll see, new apartment buildings or new office buildings, especially in Madison, a lot of apartments that are going up. But we also do get some cases from residential construction, so that's more the home remodeling or renovation. And yeah, so I work with any workers in the construction industry, but like you said, Lola, we're all bilingual in the worker center, all of the organizers, and we see a lot of immigrant workers in particular. So my focus is more on the lower wage, often more immigrant heavy side of construction. And so those are going to be trades like framing. So the initial freight stages of construction where you have the wood framing going up, drywall labor. Sometimes I have cases with painters as well. But those are the main trades that I see in them. The main issues that we see, because my biggest part of my job is going to construction sites or taking calls from workers who have issues, and talking to them about the working conditions, what issues they might be facing, what concerns they might have. And the biggest issues that we see are primarily wage theft, and that's very common, especially in residential construction, but sometimes it does happen in commercial construction as well, where a worker basically works and is not paid or isn't paid enough, isn't paid what they're owed. Then we also see a lot of misclassification, and that's a term that basically refers to when a worker should be classified as an employee of the company that they're doing labor for, but instead the company misclassifies them as an independent contractor. And they mainly do that essentially. What that means for tax purposes or for legal purposes is that company no longer has to pay payroll taxes for that person. They also don't have to cover them under workers' compensation. So they don't have that insurance for workplace injuries. Basically, a lot of those responsibilities that a company takes on by employing someone, they're able to shift those responsibilities onto the worker. And they do so in an illegal way because there are laws that say if you, under certain conditions, if you're being told when to come to work, provide materials, there's a number of legal tests depending on what agency you're talking about. But under a variety of legal tests, the government can show that a person should be a worker and not an independent contractor. So it's something that a lot of companies do to sort of get around a lot of employment law and deprive workers of a lot of their rights. So misclassification is the other issue that we see. And then we also see sometimes injuries. Obviously, construction is one of the most dangerous industries in the country. I believe it might be second only to mining, I think, is according to recent statistics. So a very dangerous industry and a lot of injuries. And that kind of goes hand in hand often with this classification, because oftentimes you'll have folks that thought they were working as employees and then they get injured and then they tried to get their workers' comp, get their medical bills paid for. But it turns out their employer was classifying them as an independent contractor, in which case they're kind of out of luck. So misclassification also leads to wage theft. So it kind of goes hand in hand with that as well, because a misclassified worker, if you're an independent contractor, you're not eligible for overtime. And so there's a lot of workers who will miss out on wages that they're owed through that as well. So that's essentially my position and some of the biggest issues that I see.
And like, so I have like a lot of questions. One has to do with like strategically from the Worker Justice Wisconsin. What is the decision behind like targeting construction, right? Like, and because this like a specific industry that you're all going after, and I imagine there's several reasons for that. Some with like probably the population, but also like the potential that you see there. So maybe you wanted to share about like what do you see, like, you know, and when you're going to sites, like are workers engaging, are workers calling you, like do workers want to know, like do they know that their that their rights are being violated or not, like, you know, what are you seeing, and what is the strategic view you have for the sector from the labor center? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so I'm the second person in the role. So I wasn't here when I guess when the role was fully initiated, but I think the one of the big impetuses was that first of all, that we focus particularly on lower wage and immigrant labor, and the construction industry is one of the industries that's most heavily dependent on immigrant labor. It's if you look at the statistics on the amount of immigrants that are in construction, especially certain trades, it's very significant. The industry is kind of like agriculture; it's essentially dependent on immigrant labor, and so it's strategically significant in that regard. We also do work closely with a lot of trade unions, and for the building trades, this issue of misclassification is significant to them, and so we work closely with them. So for them, it's a big issue that they want to see addressed, and so it's sort of a common interest that we have. We want to see the population that we worked with treated well, and for them, it's in their interest that it's addressed as well. So it's kind of a mutual goal that we have that's been very productive in that sense. So that's another reason. I think that the goal overall is to really crack down on misclassification and wage theft in the construction industry. You've seen some other states really paving the way on it. We've seen some leadership at the state level in Wisconsin in terms of, I believe, before my time, there was a task force arranged by the governor, and so there's been some action on it at the state level, but we definitely need much more. If you look to sites, other states, for example, Minnesota, that has really increased the criminal penalties for wage theft. Because right now, the laws just um, are not strong enough to get the workers what they need, and so that's why we turn to organizing. That workers using their collective power to get the rights that they deserve and to have them carried out. But obviously, the long-term goal would be a change um, in the basically the state policy with regard to these issues. Because these days, um, oftentimes a worker will file a complaint with the state about wage theft, and there'll be a determination made, but nothing will be done. The employer will just ignore it, or the state has agents that will investigate misclassification and sometimes levy fines against employers, but some employers just kind of will pay the fine and continue doing the same thing that they did, just kind of seeing it as the cost of business. Um, so what we really want to do is organize workers along with the community to put pressure not only on developers, but also on the democratic institutions at the city, county, and state level to really uh, uh, force these developers to change their ways and force the contractors and subcontractors all the way down the chain to change their ways and to stop mistreating workers on their sites. Particularly, we focus on taxpayer funded sites as well. So those are sites that will receive tax credits from the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority. That's at the state level. Then you also have funds at the county, Dane County, and City of Madison level, where the city or county will distribute, for through some manner or another, taxpayer funds to these sites. And I think that what we focus on those in particular as well, because I think that the taxpayers of Madison, the county, and Wisconsin don't want to see their taxes going towards these not only immoral but often very brazenly illegal activities. So we're really, the sort of broad strategic goal is bringing organizing workers, organizing community and support to work with the democratic institutions to change the way that these developers operate. Because currently, this sort of misclassification, wage theft, it's really sort of the I guess the modus operandi of the construction industry these days. A lot of developers, it's sort of structurally dependent on a lot of these abuses of immigrant workers, and so we're trying to target that. And we're trying to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting what you highlight regarding, right, like the connection between public funds right? Kind of subsidizing both wage theft and, in many cases, very blatant health and safety violations. And so I have I have a lot of questions. I know our time is limited, but like one of the other things I wanted to ask you specifically about is I know there's been a case recently where precisely this connection between public funds, like a developer, et cetera, and a case of wage theft kind of happened that you were involved with, and maybe you want to share a little bit of that with us.
Sure, yeah. One of our biggest cases last year was at an apartment construction site in the west side of Madison. It was a site called the Yellowstone Apartments. Received tax credits through WHEDA, the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority. And so as workers, about 16 workers who came in, they were owed about $30,000 in wages from a third tier subcontractor, um, or sorry, second tier subcontractor. Because the way the construction industry works is you have the developer up at the top, basically the company that has the money to construct the site. They contract the construction work out to what's called a general contractor. That's the contractor, the company that's in charge of the entire site. And the general contractor will typically subcontract out the work depending on the trade. So they'll have a contractor there, the subcontractor there to do drywall, a subcontractor there to do the electric, to do the plumbing, everything that goes into a building. So the general contractor on the Yellowstone Apartments, which is owned by the developer, it's kind of like an in-house general contractor. They subcontracted out the work to a Wisconsin-based company. That Wisconsin-based company then subcontracted the work again out to another company out from Illinois. And there were a number of workers who went to go work there. And essentially the subcontractor, the second tier subcontractor, and then worked for a few days, hadn't even told them what they were going to get paid, then said that he ran out of material and then so laid them off. They still didn't know how much they were going to get paid. And then eventually and then when it came time to pay them, told them they had to keep waiting. He hadn't received his money. Employers will come up with often a lot of excuses, whether or not they're accurate, it's hard to know, but was telling them to keep waiting and waiting and waiting. Eventually they came to us. And what we did is we, together with the workers, we, basically did what's called a march on the boss. So we went with a letter to the superintendent of the site, the general contractor, saying, we've had this issue with one of your subcontractors, and we're looking for your support in resolving it. In that particular case, the general contractor actually was very helpful. They did do the right thing once they found out about the issue, and that they, made sure that their subcontractor resolved the issue. So it's a long and complicated story. Definitely don't have the time to go into all the grainy details, but in the end, the vast majority of the wages were recuperated. And one of the workers in that case recently testified before the city council, the plan commission, the city of Madison plan commission, on his experience on that site, because that developer is proposing a new site actually just down the street from the Yellowstone Apartments. And so it was a chance because the developers were at that meeting too, it was a chance to share that information in front of the developers. The alders then asked the developer about the situation. One of the alders had previously met with them, and the developer then shared, and this is all public record because it was a public meeting, was sharing some of the steps that they are taking to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And so that was, one example of something that we've done to make sure that the public officials are aware of this, and to try to put that pressure on developers to make sure that they, aren't letting these sorts of things take place on their sites.
And I think like something else that Worker Justice Wisconsin has been pursuing is, I think you mentioned this before, but maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about kind of changing how wage theft is considered, right? Like trying to make it into like a crime, basically, because it's so interesting, that if you go and you do a petty robbery, and that's definitely a crime, but you can be stealing, in this case, $30,000 from workers, but that's not necessarily like a crime. And I'm not in favor of criminalizing everything, but I just want to know more about kind of like the campaign that I think the organization had been involved in the past few years of trying to see if, like, as you were saying, strengthen the legislation or the penalties basically from engaging in this behavior.
Yeah. So right now, there are a lot of states who have taken action to further criminalize wage theft. Right now in Wisconsin, it's There are some laws on the books that do provide for things like prison time for stolen wages. It's just that they're rarely enforced, and even then they're fairly weak too. So they would probably be in need of updating. But broadly speaking, regardless of the laws that are on the books, the way wage theft is treated in Wisconsin is almost exclusively as a civil violation. And what that means is that if you call the police, for example, the sort of comparison you gave, if you steal from your employer, they'll call the police and you'll probably be arrested. If your employer steals from you in terms of stealing your wages, if you call the police, they'll say, this is a civil violation. We don't really handle this as the police. What you'll have to do is file a complaint with the state agency, the Department of Workforce Development, that will then investigate it and come to a determination. But we've had plenty of cases in the Worker Center where the department arrives at a determination, sort of gives that, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure exactly what the term would be, but I imagine something like a civil order, orders the employer to pay up, and the employer ignores it, and there's no real consequences. What you can do at that point is then take the employer to a small claims court if it's, less than $10,000, or to, I guess, to civil court if it's a greater amount. But then that's a whole nother long and arduous process. So uh, that's the sort of difficulty of it being treated as a civil complaint, is that, a lot of workers who obviously have far limited resources compared to the employers who can, bring their lawyers in and things like that. It's not really a fair fight. And it's sort of an interminable process almost. And so we definitely would like it to be treated like it is treated in, places like Minnesota. I think New York has also made moves on this in terms of treating it more like a crime, because, like you said, we don't necessarily want to, criminalize everything, but in in this particular case, it may be the only way of ensuring that employers, do what they're supposed to do. Because obviously there are responsible employers out there, but a lot of unscrupulous employers, the only thing that might actually get them to stop is harsher penalties. And so for that, we obviously need change in terms of state law and the way that district attorneys prosecute these kinds of cases.
Yeah, and as you were saying, right, it's like not only an unfair fight, but the consequences for workers with very limited resources are immediate, right? And they cannot always afford, I mean, usually cannot afford, first to work without being paid, and also to wait who knows how much time to get that money back, right?
Yeah.
Another question that I really wanted to ask you, so you can share, is that I know that you've been basically using health and safety as an entry point for doing organizing through an OSHA grant. So maybe you wanted to tell us a little bit more about that, right? About how you're combining education on health and safety and like serving workers about the health and safety issues and needs, and use that as like a starting point for an organizing conversation, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, so we have a grant from OSHA through, it's called the Susan Harwood Training Grant Program. And so over the course of the past year or so, we've developed a train. It started with a needs assessment survey, is what it's called. So we did surveys in construction sites throughout the community, talking to workers about what sort of hazards they've seen or experienced on the sites. What we found were the most common ones were falls, struck bys, and extreme heat. And so that's what the training we developed then focuses on. And so then now, over the past couple of quarters, we've been offering that training in the community. And so that looks like a lot of more site visits to distribute flyers about the training, say who we are, basically recruit workers to take the training completely free because we have the funds from OSHA to do it. Um, uh, Under OSHA rules, we're restricted in what we can talk about when we're, on OSHA time. So obviously, when we're on the sites, we're talking about, strictly about health and safety. But once the workers are in the worker center, after the training is complete, after they've taken the training, or maybe even days later, some of them they'll call us up with other concerns that they might have. And so it's sort of a way to bring people in, give them some general education about health and safety. But then for some people that can spark an interest in learning about other rights that they might have, or might spark or cause them to act on some of their concerns about some other irregularities they might see on their job, now that they know who we are, and now that they know that we educate on health and safety, but we also educate on all kinds of other rights as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that first, because health and safety education and information is so needed, particularly in the immigrant community, because we find that people don't really know about their rights. Of course, they know when things are like kind of wrong, but sometimes you need to be terribly wrong for them to think that there's anything they can do about it, or even then, they sometimes don't think there's anything they can do about it. So I guess this brings me to my last question, and I want to also invite any of the attendees to write any questions they might have for you. While I ask you the last question, you can use the chat, the Q&A option, to write any questions you might have for David. So David, just to, of course, we are in a complicated context currently. So I was wondering about some of the challenges that the organization and you have been facing in your work, and that you also see in your relation to the community and to the workers, right? Like, how are things looking like? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing, both in terms of organizing and in terms of like the organization itself, what challenges the organization is facing?
Yeah, I think on a day-to-day basis, obviously with what we're seeing in terms of immigration enforcement at the federal level, oftentimes you have workers a bit more nervous to talk to strangers, people they haven't met before. And they previously have been sort of regardless of their status, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of, um, uh, you know, people being profiled essentially if they're, yeah, that famous case before the Supreme Court about Los Angeles, about, sort of going after people to potentially question and detain them based on simply their appearance or accent or a place that they work in. And so, obviously, on those criteria, regardless of someone's status, they're going to feel like a target if they're a Spanish speaking immigrant, doesn't speak English, works in construction. So there's definitely been sort of that heightened fear. And so to navigate that, I do a lot of basically repeat site visits where I'll show up, multiple times, and eventually people will sort of start to realize, oh, I've seen that guy before. He's not here to question me about, immigration status or anything like that. He's here for something else. And so that's sort of one way that we've tried to navigate those sort of heightened, tensions that are obviously felt in the immigrant community. I think at an organizational level, there's certainly been financial challenges. I think, and basically all nonprofits have been facing it these days, whether that's with the decrease in federal funding, but also just in general, even private funders are sort of being a bit more careful based given the political environment, the economic environment, with all the uncertainty going on these days, even private funders can be a bit more hesitant. And so yeah, there are definitely challenges both on on a personal, interpersonal level, and then also at like a sort of structural organizational level. But we're doing the best we can with the situation that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, some of the like what's like the I guess the situation that we're in is that your work is most needed than ever, right? Because we need workers to know about their rights, because we need the workers and immigrant workers specifically to know that they're supported. And at the same time, it's more challenging to do than ever, right? Because
Yeah.
what makes sense, which is that people are more scared or like, more reluctant to
Yeah.
pursue claims, right? I imagine that maybe they'll call you about something, or maybe they'll be willing to talk, but then also continuing a claim or like taking more serious action, like you were saying, like, like a march on the bus, or like, signing a petition, or even like rallying in front of like someone's like, like a development company or whatever like that, they're going to be less likely to engage in that type of action. So I guess like as we don't have any questions, I'm going to ask you one more, which is like, okay, what's next? What are you hoping to accomplish this year? What are some of like the other campaigns or the other goals that you and Worker Justice Wisconsin have for this year in terms of like organizing immigrant workers?
Yeah, so we'd like to continue trying to raise awareness, not just in the public, but also especially with public officials on what's going on in a lot of these sites, particularly taxpayer funded sites. So I think that's going to be one of our biggest focuses this year. We're happy with how went at the city council. And so we plan on trying to deepen those relationships with democratic institutions and, organizing immigrant workers to put that pressure on those institutions to make sure that you know all these construction sites with taxpayer funds are places where workers are being treated well. With the hope that that will sort of set more of an industry standard for how workers are being treated. Um, overall, I mean, as far as other things going at the Worker Center, my coworker who organizes worker cooperatives, so those are basically democratically run worker-owned businesses. She's currently in the process of incubating a cleaning business, a cleaning cooperative with a number of workers. I have a coworker who focuses on wage theft, and so she more works on that issue of trying to criminalize wage theft, and so she does a lot of community outreach with her group. So she, obviously it's just one person, but um, was does a lot of community outreach with other basically volunteers, people who are involved in the organization, and so she's been working on trying to build that group and raise the awareness in the community about wage theft and how to catch cases of wage theft. She does a training on how to read your pay stub so you can try to catch wage theft if it starts to happen to you. So those are some of the goals here and there based on, we have a number of different programs. But all of the common goal is, making sure workers are organized and making sure workers are um, educated on their rights.
We have two questions now, and I'm gonna ask you both, and then you can answer them together. The first one's from Adrienne Pajak, who's asking, thanks for your remarks and your work. We've seen that economic development is largely driven by the explosion of AI, the construction of data centers particularly. And she asked, how do you all at Worker Justice Wisconsin navigate the tensions that exist within communities about economic development related to AI? Its short and long-term promises and the environmental implications for those communities, right? Like where construction workers might live. And then Pamela is asking you if you organize on residential as well as commercial and government-funded projects.
Yeah. To answer the first question about AI, I know that's definitely a big conversation among the building trades. That because we aren't as involved in the side of whether or not projects are approved. We're more focusing on the workers on the sites. We don't necessarily have much of a role. It's not been a super huge, I guess, sticking point or decision point within the worker center ourselves, especially because focusing on being just one person and focusing on the Madison area. Most of my site visits are to the many apartment buildings that are going up, and so I, with the data centers that might start going up, whether we'll even have the capacity to reach those areas, we'll see. But I know it definitely is a live issue among the building trades, in that, these constructions, these, massive data centers that are being proposed would be a source of, excellent jobs while they're being constructed. But then there's obviously the question of what impact are they going to have on the community afterwards, both in terms of environmental impact, in terms of energy consumption and water usage, but also even more broadly about, is this a technology that we even want to be pursuing or promoting, or what are the implications going to be for human society? I don't, obviously we could talk for a really long time about that, but I know we're running out of time. But long story short, I definitely, based on my relationships with the building trades, I know it's sort of is a live issue among the building trades of navigating that tension of wanting more construction, more jobs for the communities, building trades jobs and jobs in the building trades unions are excellent jobs, great wages and benefits. So sort of weighing that with also what are the consequences of data center construction as opposed to housing construction, which is obviously still controversial in many cases, but sort of less controversial. I know we all want, housing for the people in the community, especially in a place like Madison. But obviously the the data centers thing is a whole even bigger issue. So I personally on a day-to-day basis don't interact with it much, but I know it's a very live issue among the building trades and among obviously public officials too. So
yeah, and we are out of time. So the other question from Pamela was that if you do commercial besides, like residential.
yeah,
No, residential besides commercial. Sorry.
Yeah, we primarily organize on commercial because those are longer term projects. Residential is often so small that it's, hard to, organizing takes time, and these, projects often are done pretty quickly, or it's done by very small companies with small crews. So I handle cases on residential construction, like cases of wage theft, but as far as the more higher profile organizing drives, those more often take place on the larger sites that are more longer term. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes total sense, as you were saying, because there's limited resources, right? It's you trying to organize the whole Madison area, which is a lot. So we ran out of time, and it was amazing talking to you, David. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing, and everyone at Worker Justice Wisconsin. It's always a pleasure to hear you. And I know the organization needs all our support. So we are here for the work that you're doing. And thank you again for joining us and for everyone who came to listen to David. And you can contact Worker Justice Wisconsin if you want to know more, if you want to support the organization, if you want to do outreach or anything. Thank you again, David, for being here today.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for your time, and you can find us at workerjustice.org. Yeah.
Bye, everyone. See you next month.